First of all, I'm very glad to be here with you today. And it's an exciting opportunity to share some of my experience with such great auditory. We heard many great presentations related to cloud today, and I want to continue this panel of discussions by explanation of cloud migration journey, how to estimate cloud migration, cloud exit, and when cloud makes sense from financial standpoint. And my vision is vision of architect and the lead of such complex transformations. First of all, just a few words about me. For more than 10 years, I've been deeply involved in leading complex cloud migration projects across large enterprises around the world. And I built and led Cloud Center of Excellence, Cloud Migration Center of Excellence, managed infrastructure practices, and worked hands-on through every phase of cloud migrations and cloud exit projects, from the initial assessment to the retirement of legacy systems after moving to the cloud. This includes working inside highly regulated environment like banking, finance, etc. When we talk about cloud migration, cloud exit, or any other digital transformation initiatives, one of the most important aspects is the estimation of financial cost and real ROI, return of investments. This is a very large and complex topic. It includes many layers that should be discussed separately, especially in the context of financial predictability. We need to understand when cloud migration, cloud exit, or any other approaches actually make sense. There are real numbers and estimation frameworks that help us evaluate both options. And yes, to be honest, we can even predict and calculate the turning point, the moment when a cloud exit starts to make more financial sense, so we can make informed decisions. Unfortunately, I have a limit of time, and for this reason, I want to stop today only on one very important part, such transformations. How do we estimate the time and cost of a cloud migration or a cloud exit initiatives? In my personal experience, this is the most unclear part. I've spoken with many teams, and very often nobody really knows how to build a realistic estimate for such transformations, not even a rough one. So let's focus there, because without a clear estimate, it's impossible to plan or compare options in a meaningful way. My goal is to share a practical financial evaluation framework that can help you estimate the true cost and timeline of cloud transformation projects. Understand where ROI really appears or sometimes disappears, and support better decision making based on measurable data, not based on assumptions. And I will focus on the financial side of these transformations. But I want to say something important upfront. Financials alone are not enough. We all know that decisions around cloud migrations or cloud exit are also shaped by compliance, risk, security, available talent, long-term business goals, and many other aspects. Based on that experience, I can say with confidence, we can estimate quite accurately both the timeline and budget for such transformations, if we ask the right questions and follow a structured approach. Before we dive into models and budgets, let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Cloud is now mainstream. Around 96% of companies use at least one public cloud, and 84% use private cloud solutions as well. But On the same time, another trend is growing, cloud exit. For example, in the US, about 42% of companies have already started moving some workloads back on-prem or plan to do so. And let's be honest, when it comes to budgeting and the roadmap in cloud migration, many teams hit a wall. I've spoken with engineers, stakeholders, and top managers of big corporations. And in most cases, they don't even have a basic cost estimation. And I understand why. These projects are very complex, and you're dealing with, let's say, a huge number of applications, what I call though legacy tech stacks, teams and mixed capabilities, compliance constraints, and of course, in many cases, pressure from leadership to move faster or sometimes cheaper. A few examples from my past. One real case of such projects, I worked on a migration project where the company had lost most of its knowledge about their own IT infrastructure. Another great example, an enterprise with systems developed over 2 decades, full of legacies, tech plus strict compliance demand. For example, for large banks, DORA or similar regulations just make this even more painful. And maybe one more example, electronics manufacturer with factories around the world decided to try to consolidate factory management in regional clouds instead of maintaining separate data centers on each factory. So it's not surprising that instead of clear plan, discussions often back on buzzwords like agility, stability, scale, business growth, modern tech, and so on and so on. That's why I started working on a simple question. Can we build a repeatable, real-world framework to estimate cloud transformation costs? Not just infrastructure costs, not just monthly cloud bills or how to reduce these costs, but the true cost of change across the full life cycle of migration or repatriation our infrastructure, from assessment phase up to deprecation of our old infrastructure. And that's what I want to share with you now. A practical, repeatable structure that you can adapt to your own company, your own project, and your own FinOps practices. Based on my experience, I divided the model into a few stages. This gives both FinOps teams and decision makers a clear structure. Let's walk through them. Just one important note before we will start. My goal is to show the approach, a way to estimate each step, not to provide exact numbers for your specific case. These numbers will vary depending on whether you use internal resources or engage an external consulting company like EPAM, DAO, etc. The seniority of the people involved and specific compliance or engagement requirements. Let's start with initial assessment of IT landscape. This includes business and architecture priorities, existing platforms, and migration goals. You don't need 100% detail at this point, but you do need to align with business stakeholders early. Without this, you risk building a migration plan that no one wants or understands. We can estimate the step more or less easily based on the size and mix of required team and the scope of the environment. Based on general understanding of company request, we can estimate the team size, duration, and cost of this phase more or less easily. For example, at least we need a business analyst, delivery manager, and lead architect. And in some cases, additional people to cover all aspects of business. Let's say in the case of mid-size enterprise, we engage just 3 senior roles. for a focused 2-week effort, and it will cost around 40,000 euro for external client. If we ask about that some outsourcing company. Based on my experience, many companies, for different reasons, this is out of scope of our discussion, don't have a full and up-to-date picture of their IT landscape. That's why the technical assessment phase is not an optional. It's a mandatory and highly recommended. In this step, we segment the landscape into logical application groups based on dependencies, ownership, etc., and collect key technical details for the migration team. This includes mapping applications, identifying owners, documentation dependencies, and grouping components into logical units. This grouping should reflect how systems are used and owned inside the organization. It's the foundation of everything, because cost and timeline vary application by application. This phase is also very predictable in terms of time and budget. You can balance speed and cost depending on team size and the time constraints. For example, let's say we have one team with 3 architects, which should cover different aspects of our infrastructure, like enterprise, infrastructure, and the software, 1 DevOps engineer, 1 developer, and 1 business analyst. If this team processes 1 logical application per week, the cost per week will look like 30,000 every week. By understanding the average number of applications, you can estimate how much time the assessment will take and how much it will cost. And now we get to the most interesting part of the estimation. During the assessment phase, for each group of applications, we can apply a scorecard. We are not aiming for perfect precision. No, we are aiming for direction. And the scorecard includes a few key areas. Application stability. This is about questions like tech stack maturity, infrastructure complexity, availability, observability, etc. So complex such options. Next one, it's a group of questions about team consistency. Is the owning team stable? Is there documentation in place? Any staffing or knowledge gaps, etc. And the third part of questions, it's about migration complexity. For example, size of the data which should be migrated, number of integration points, internal and external, any potential blockers. And we may also assess additional factors, but this structure gives us a clear and repeatable way to evaluate each application group. And now, based on many complex cloud migration projects I've led, I can tell you very interesting thing. The final score for each logical application has a direct correlation with how long and how much it will take to migrate. The tech stack and deadlines define how many teams we need and what skills they should have. And the business goal directly influences the selected migration approach, like lift and shift or a platform refactor, etc., and act as a multiplier in our budget model. And compliance and other risks also act as a multiplier in our budgeting model. For example, if an application scores in the medium complexity range, we might estimate 6 weeks for its migration, assuming 3 environments and 1 dedicated team for this migration. So, what do we get from this? A structured way to calculate both the timeline and the budget. For example, 1 application, 6 weeks, 3-person migration team, estimated cost 20,000 euro. Now we have a clear roadmap and financial plan until end of this transformation. So we can predict more or less, of course, we can predict how long this cloud journey, how many time we should spend and what budget should we have for it. And now um, I want more insight. Not everything needs to be migrated. In most enterprise environments and even not enterprise, based on general statistic, from 15 up to 30% of applications can be retired, as because they are outdated, unused, or due to deprecation. Based on my experience, this number is usually about 20%. This is one of the easiest way to reduce scope and cost, but unfortunately many teams overlook it. You can apply a basic agent model like if the tech stack is more than 7 years old, not aligned with business growth, poorly maintained, then you flag it as a retirement candidate. One of the most expensive stages is the transition period, when you're paying for two environments at the same time. During this phase, cloud costs don't go down, and on-prem costs don't disappear. You need to factor this as well. Estimate how long each application will live in dual stack mode, and plan infra and support budgets accordingly. This period often lasts longer than expected. I've seen team assume 3 months, but the reality is often 6 to 12 months or even more in some cases. And finally, if you're moving workloads on premise back from cloud, don't forget about capital expenses, CapEx. And for hardware, storage, backup, network, data center expansion, etc. And even in cloud migrations, you often need to temporarily scale up DevOps and SRE team because existing teams still support production, and you can't ask the same people to handle migration full time without creation delays or burnout. Uh, mm, Whether you're planning a cloud migration, cloud exit, or just optimizing what you already have, the core question is always the same, especially at the beginning of such journey. What is the business goal? What does it really cost? Not theoretically, but with real numbers. And can we justify it with numbers, not by assumption? And moreover, based on my extensive experience in this field, I would say we can automate many things with modern AI to speed up this process, save a lot of money and time for such initiatives, and make them more predictable. And it's potentially maybe a very great decision. Uh, that's all from my side for today. If you